All right, main idea means let's just dive right in, see what we can get, and try to keep it as simple as possible. What are they saying? In 1934, physicist Eugene Wigner posited the existence of a crystal consisting entirely of electrons in a honeycomb-like structure. Okay. The so-called Wigner crystal remained largely conjecture. That seems important. However, until Feng Wang and colleagues announced in 2021 that they had captured an image of one, okay, the researchers trapped electrons between two semiconductors and then cooled the apparatus, causing the electrons to settle into a crystalline structure. By inserting an ultra-thin sheet of graphene above the crystal, the researchers obtained an impression, the first visual confirmation of the Wigner crystal. Before I even get to the choices, notice what I highlighted and focused on. It's not the science stuff. I have no idea what they're talking about. A honeycomb-like structure consisting entirely of electrons? I'm not even going to bother to try to picture what that is. I don't care. It's what they say about the science that matters. So my dumb summary of this is someone had an idea, and then later on, someone else proved it and showed the thing that the other guy just thought about. Conjecture means it's a hypothesis, and now it sounds like there's an experiment that proves it. So conjecture to proof. That's kind of what this thing is about. Let's see if there's a choice that matches with that. A, researchers have obtained the most definitive evidence to date of the existence of the Wigner crystal. Well, definitive evidence sounds a lot like proof, so let's keep that choice. B, researchers have identified an innovative new method for working with unusual crystalline structures. Well, this does two things. Okay, let's talk about this choice. It's definitely wrong, but let me give you two reasons why that might come up in other choices. Innovative new method. Well, this is not about the process that they use. Like, they do describe it, but that's not why this passage exists. It's not to describe the process. So this is kind of like a little bit of a misdirection. They're kind of referring to something that seems to be important but isn't really the main focus. And more generally, okay, this piece, I guess, is what I would say is a small to big problem. Small to big. So what I mean by that is, this passage is small. It's about one thing, one specific type of crystal, the Wigner whatever, okay? One example, one small example. But this choice has made it bigger, okay? Right now it's talking about all unusual crystalline structures. The passage is not about all unusual crystalline structures. It's about the one, right? So they went from this small example and they blew it up into this big generalization. We're not allowed to do that. So this is a very common tactic that the SAT uses for wrong answers. So think about that as you're eliminating choices. Not just does it feel right or wrong, but can you start to kind of categorize why things are wrong? The more you can do that, the more you'll notice it in harder questions. Let's look at C. Graphene is the most important, that's a problem, of the components required to capture an image of a Wigner crystal. I mean, that honestly may be true. I don't really know. It talks about graphene here. Yeah, there's graphene. They just say that it's there. So this is another good example where they have gone and quantified something that isn't quantified in the passage, right? They say it's an important part, I guess, because they mention it. But is it the most important part? Well, I don't know. It doesn't say, and so I'm not allowed to make that kind of leap. So this is another example of something that the SAT does a lot. Words like most or majority, primary, these are words that scare me because they're so extreme, and we really need to justify those words. D, it's difficult to acquire an image of a Wigner crystal because of the crystal's honeycomb structure. Well, that may be true. It sounds like if it took them, 70 years, 80 years to do it, it's probably hard. But they don't actually say it's difficult to get this image. It's the first one. But maybe this was the first time they tried. I don't know. It doesn't say. Now look, even if you were between A and D, A is much safer. Again, a lot of times with these science passages, it's not about the science. It's about what we learn from the science. In this case, this is an example not of like the specific crystal per se. It's more about like the idea of like, okay, first you think of something and then you prove it to be true in science. So that more general idea is very nice and fits with choice A. It requires me to understand less science, whereas D is getting a little too specific into the science. And like I said, it's just not actually stated. So even if you think D is reasonable, you need to find evidence of it, and it's not there. Whereas they do say, obtain the most definitive evidence to date. Okay, they say it's the first visual confirmation, right? So I can draw a line from this idea that's in a choice, that's a very strong idea, and connect it to the lines. And that's interesting because, I just realized this choice that's right also includes the word most, which I eliminated before because I said it was wrong. So what's the deal? Is most good or is it bad? Well, neither. It's usually bad, but we have to at least look at it, right? Strong words are not always wrong. They're just always words that we need to check and we need to find evidence of. And they say it's the first visual confirmation. That sounds like the most definitive evidence we've ever had. They don't talk about anything else, so there you go. That is a reasonable thing that we can prove with something in the lines. This is a really good question. It brings in a lot of different ideas, and I think that for many of you, you're going to be intimidated right at the beginning because the science is so complex. But it's never about that. You don't need to know science to get the science questions right. It's always about other things, so don't let that panic you. Just go through it methodically like I did, and the right answer should appear and be justified by the lines.